So, good morning, good afternoon. We're in the middle of the day. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Ratko. I'm coming also from the small country, Croatia. We are very similar in the ways that we are operating and thinking many things around the governments and so forth. And my role is a little bit different. I work for this small company, and which gives me ability to talk to many governments around the world. Lately, a lot about use of technology and how we should achieve the things, what will be the use cases, and of course, in the last 2 years, I think we are very much focused on the AI. But let me first start with something that maybe, I don't know, did you miss it, right? I mean, every year we have these Nobel Prizes, and we are giving, as a humanity, we are giving them away. And this year it was very interesting that 2 of them went directly to the projects or projects related to the artificial intelligence. Now, there's a big difference between these 2, right? The first one in physics was basically a work which lasted for 30 years, 30-something years. And the gentleman received, these 2 physics guys, they received the award for basically the fundamentals of how now artificial intelligence works for the neural networks. And it took 30 years to recognize that work. Now, on the right side, you have a chemistry, right, which was about folding proteins and understanding how that works and, cracking the code of proteins in the first place. And that one was developed in less than 2 years. Why? Because it used artificial intelligence. So there's a big difference, 4 years, 2 years. But the later one, was using the results and, know-how and all the developments that we did around basically machine learning, and then developing results. Now, apart from the thing which tells us AI is not that new, right? People started to do this a long, long time ago, and Phil was saying, well, I'm working for over 10 years in the field, right? There's a big difference what happened back then and now. Now, back then, dealing with the artificial intelligence and thinking about how do you mimic your brain and how the brain works and how maybe machine could do that was very isolated effort. Today, when you're building something in other research areas and you're utilizing AI, now everybody knows about the AI. I mean, people, even in governments, I would say people are looking very seriously on how they use artificial intelligence to move things forward. Now, why this works? Because we are creating brand new ecosystems, brand new economies in the countries which want to go very fast, right? So today, when you're trying to utilize AI, right, you have a bunch of partners, you have a bunch of vendors, you have hardware providers, you have small startups, you have big scale-ups. And there was a question, should we use AI in our projects as startups? Well, it makes sense, and there's a lot of cases where it makes sense. But the ecosystem today, right, from the land and power and building, I don't know, chips and data centers and so forth, up to the developers and users, they're supported by a variety of different stakeholders who are giving a value into that system. Now, very good governments are looking at this chart and they would say, we need to develop all of them, but not necessarily build them, but build the capacity, right? So they would go into, okay, where's our data? What do we do with the startups? Who can provide us capacity? How do we work on the short, mid, long term with all these ecosystems which we need to build around? Because building ecosystems, if you want to go really quickly, became very, very important. Like one of the things, if you learn from the past, is how we built Silicon Valley, right? And people still are very confused about this one, I think. They're starting with the startups. They would say something like, and yes, then, Apple or whoever built the campus, and then, no, it started way before that one. It started in a collaboration between the universities and investments coming from the government in specific areas. You can see the specific areas, and every single area gave us something, right? It gave us internet. It gave us new technologies around, when we were traveling into space and learning, right? And every single effort, which was part of the ecosystem, later on developed brand new economy around this one. So if there's anything that we can learn from the past, right, we can learn that ecosystems make sense, and they grew. The ecosystem grows over the time, right? And the time is now compressed. The things that we used to do for 50 years, now we are able to do in 2 or 3 years or less. Now, let me tell you a little bit from our own experiences, what we see around, right? I travel the world, I talk to different governments, and it's very fashionable, I would say, today that governments are saying, like, we want to invest in AI. This conference is also kind of investment, like a push toward the AI in the first place. Now, different countries have different capabilities to do that, and one of them is money, of course, like investment commitment. And when you look at the numbers, right, and this is, public announcements, governments will go out and they say, like, okay, we want to invest in the next 2, 3, 5 years into the artificial intelligence, like they would commit to a different numbers. Now, very important in a way, it's a guideline when you look at which countries are doing that, right? And I always hear on panels or on presentations where people say, like, yeah, China versus US and so forth. But you can see that there are other governments who are investing significant money, especially in the Middle East, right? And these amounts are not small. So what they're trying to do with the money, they're buying first quantity, right? I had the opportunity to go, for example, on the meeting in Saudi, right? And there's like 8 people sitting in front of me. All of them are expats. All of them are top PhD academics and practitioners who knows a lot about the AI, who are trying to speed up the deployment of AI in a specific country, right? So the speed varies. Sometimes with the money, they're looking on the quantity, but we know that from the amount of the quantity itself, they are shooting for the quality. And eventually that will happen, right? And we will see different projects coming from different areas, and you can compare with some EU announcements. You see how the world is becoming a competitive place, right? It's Asia, it's Middle East, US, China, and then European Union. So if you think where you are in European Union or some of the countries, the speed of the development is quite different than maybe speed of the development which is happening outside. And for the purpose, I said new AI economy, because it will be an economy, right? And when you think about what is going to drive a country and how people are going to develop themselves and companies and bring back the growth of GDP and so forth, it's going to be very much connected to the investments that the government is doing. Now, this is not coming, of course, out of nowhere, right? I mean, when you look at some of these indexes, right, you can clearly see like which countries are investing in which capacity. And all of them, all the good ones, have a history of innovation efforts, I would say, like searching for the companies, startups, and scale-ups, and so forth, which can drive the next cycle of innovation, and with that one, the next cycle of growth. Now, important part is the right one, right? You can see that some of them are jumping quite aggressively, right? A lot of money, again, quantity, quality. They're improving the way, how we live, how the company is operating, and so forth. So if you have time, go and look a little bit on, for example, PwC index of quality of digital services, government digital services. Now, if I would ask you which country is the best worldwide digital country, a lot of people would say Estonia, right? It's like we're talking about that one for a number of years. But if you look at the latest indexes, there will be Emirates, there will be Malta, there will be Denmark, there will be some other countries. So it's becoming very, very, very dynamic in that sense. So one of the things which is very important is in that ecosystem, like who brings what to the table. And just to give you the example, you see this blue slope over there. Like that's a cumulative cost of the whole Apple program, Apple which brought us to the moon, over the number of years, right? In the indexed dollars, right? And that happened from 1960s to 1973, so it's basically 13 years. The yellow one is how much we are investing in the cloud computing data centers in this year, right? So the size of the investment of private companies into the capacity that you can use and you are using, right? And we are building services on top of it. We are building ecosystem, community, startups, is basically equal to the whole program which brought us to the moon. And this is going to not just continue, it's going to increase. And everybody's talking about the level of CapEx, so dollars spent into the data center, into the capacity. And this is the kind of fight for the new economy which is happening around the world. And governments have different approach, right? The good one, we're always talking about solutions. I have a problem, give me a solution. What is your catalog? Let me see what you are developing. I will pick and choose some of them. The better one would say like, well, I want to create the ecosystem around this one. More people, let's open it up, right? Let's build agents, let's build APIs. Let's make sure that people can connect and reuse data and services of others and so forth. But the really good ones, they're building platforms. And every single entity in the good ones that I know, they're thinking, can I build a platform on my own space, on my own environment, which can help and serve others in the process. So you would be surprised, we have a Minister of Culture, which is building a platform. We have a Minister of Tourism, it's building a platform. We have not just government, like every specific agencies, they're building something which needs to be a part of the ecosystem. One of the biggest platforms that people are searching for now and they're trying to enable is the productivity platform, right? And you can see on the slide, historically, every time when we would introduce game-changing technology, you can see and it's US data, but actually it works worldwide, you will see a spike in productivity, right? Computers, spike, right? Cloud, spike. Internet, spike. Now AI, everybody bets that this is going to go up. And productivity is super important, right? It translates directly into the GDP and whatever we want to track. So that part is going to be very important. For another thing too, we are not getting younger. There's more and more old people and less. We have a demographic issue, right? So there was a very good question on one of the, I assume, students, like, should we replace people, right? No. Right? Does this make sense? No. But there are cases where tool, automation, orchestration can do a better job, and I would say very recently, it needs to do that job, right? Because there's no one else to do it. And this is the world which is going to happen very quickly. So what do we see? And I don't want to bother you with this one because there's so many cases. The governments around the world, they're looking at this. Okay, how do we enable call centers and AI around this one? And people will, not spend time answering questions which can be done by the bot. Then into things like, okay, how do I work with my data, structured, unstructured, summarizing meetings, follow-ups. That's all done by the AI now. And then, more importantly, also having the AI as a co-pilot, as someone which is helping you to do many, many different things. Now, for that one, what is also important is important that you think about the breadth of your infrastructure, the breadth of the tools, ecosystem which supports this one. And when I say partnership, every single country, every single government should look at the ecosystem. It's very hard to build it on your own. I was in Nigeria 6 months ago, and we were discussing exactly the same thing. How do we build AI into the country, right? And, usually people are very enthusiastic, right? They should be. And they say, we are going to build 6, 7 of these AI data centers for us. And Ratko, how much the average AI data center costs? 1.5 billion. Oh, we have a problem. It's expensive, right? To build stuff and to make it work. Right? We are still working with the significant amounts of money to train things, and maybe we can recognize the cookie, that's great, but you can recognize only a cookie in that model. We need a way much more for something like that. Now, having said that one, you will see a lot of details like this one. Now, the data is coming out, and the data is very good. And you can see that the data is showing that we are progressing. We are progressing with different KPIs in terms of what AI can do. If you want to be influential and move it forward, you need to come to the data like this, right? We did 200 service calls for specific agencies. 86% of them were managed by the agents, like AI agents, and the, satisfaction rate was higher than when human did that. Very importantly, there was one case which happened very recently, maybe you saw that. They did, it's a research study, doctors, looking at what AI can do versus human in, diagnosing something. And it was very funny because looking at the data itself, the doctors were able to recognize properly 73% of the diagnosis. With the AI, they were able to do 75. Now you would say, well, it's not really the improvement. The funny thing is when we didn't include the human doctors, the correct diagnosis went to 94. So that was the bias of human we as a human, we were biased in the way how we do this diagnosis. And now other questions will kick in. Should we do it? Is it ethical? Should we listen more AI just because there's great data sets and know-how behind? These are the things which are going to happen because, and this is my last slide, and Roman will tell you a little bit about regional and local developments. We need to go into these spaces. We need to think about how we can do things massively differently because as good old friend Arthur Clarke would say, it needs to be a little bit like magic because that means we are pushing the envelope. We are moving the needle, right? And this is how it's going to end up. Roman, please join me and talk a little bit about...
Áno, ďalším speakerom na túto tému bude Roman Tuchyňa zo spoločnosti Microsoft. Nech sa páči. Thank you for information. Ďakujeme veľmi pekne za prezentáciu Ratkovi Mutavdžičovi.
Dobrý deň, dámy a páni. Ja pracujem ako technologický stratég v lokálnej pobočke Microsoftu a rozhodol som sa, že len doplním Radka s nejakými našimi lokálnymi úspechmi, s lokálnymi use casemi, ktoré sme dokázali nejako implementovať. Najskôr chcem pochváliť nášho predrečníka, tie kľúčové body, ktoré pomenoval, s nimi sa stretávame často aj my. A poďme späť k našej verejnej správe. Aké sú očakávania občanov? Ja veľmi nerád chodím do banky, na úrady, nechcem chodiť osobne, chcem všetko robiť digitálne. Všetka česť tým úradom, ktoré digitalizujú, majú digitálnu agendu, ale určite sa stretnete s niektorými, kde samozrejme musíte prísť osobne a musíte tú agentu riešiť papierovo. Naša predstava je o tom, aby tie úrady boli naozaj dostupné, dôveryhodné a samozrejme aj digitálne. Čo sme preto urobili? Ja som si požičal niekoľko príkladov z Čiech a Slovenska, tak aby som demonstroval, čo sa dá naozaj na tých use caseoch, ktoré pomenoval Ratko, pripraviť. České ministerstvo práce a sociálnych vecí, veľmi silný digitálny šampión, prešli si ťažkým obdobím. COVID, geopolitická kríza, prílev uprchlíkov z Ukrajiny a toto všetko museli riešiť. Začali spracovávať automaticky žiadosti o podporu, o sociálne dávky, kontrola dokumentov, až prišli s niečím, čo sa volá AI call center. Multikanálová podpora občanov, žiadateľov o dávky, kde podľa posledných štatistík získali až 90% úspešnosť obsluhy AI call centrom pre jednotlivé požiadavky občanom. Zostalo mi 10% na spracovanie reálnymi ľuďmi. Ako to vyzerá?
Dobrý den, jsem virtuální asistentka Eva z Ministerstva práce a sociálních věcí. Jak vám mohu pomoci?
No, dobrý den, já aktuálně nemám peníze na nájem. Existuje nějaká možnost, že mi stát pomůže finančně?
Prosím o strpení. Ano, existuje možnost získat příspěvek na bydlení. Je to sociální dávka, kterou můžete požádat na příslušném úřadu.
A ja to tu zastavím teraz, aby sme neprechádzali celý tým procesom, pretože čas mi samozrejme beží. Chcel som len demonštrovať, že celý ten proces požiadania o dávky sa dá podporiť práve riešením na základe a na báze umelej inteligencie. Druhý veľmi kľúčový zákazník, silový rezort, veľmi komplikovaný. Polícia Českej republiky. Predstavte si vyšetrovateľov, cez čo všetko si musia prejsť. A samozrejme spracovanie celého toho procesného úkonu oni musia potom dokumentovať. Pripravili sme digitálneho asistenta, ktorý sa momentálne roluje do produkcie, ktorý všetky tieto úkony dokáže naozaj spracovať a dokáže im pripraviť záverečný výstup z výsluchov a sumarizáciu toho, cez čo si prešli. Samozrejme veľmi dôležité je to, že to potvrdí ten vyšetrovateľ, to znamená, umelá inteligencia to negeneruje úplne automaticky. Viete, čo je dôležité pri takomto projekte? Technológia a riešenie, to je to najmenej. Právny, legálny a procesný rámec. Preto tam mám tú poznámku, že je veľmi dôležité sa zamerať naozaj na ochranu a reguláciu práve zákazníckych údajov. Môj posledný prípad je zo Slovenska. Najvyšší kontrolný úrad. Kontrola nejakého subjektu prechádza cez fázy, cez viacero krokov. Pri takejto kontrole sa vygeneruje kvantum dokumentov, kvantum nájdení, kvantum popisu jednotlivých krokov a činností. Z tohoto kvanta dokumentov je na záver potrebné pripraviť sumárnu správu kontroly. Takáto správa a jej príprava trvá zhruba 2 mesiace. My sme pripravili riešenie, ktoré tieto 2 mesiace stiahne na reálnu dobu a dokáže pripraviť práve takýto sumár z jednotlivých kontrol a pomôže kontrolorom fungovať efektívnejšie. Na záver by som chcel len pomenovať kľúčové fakty, ktoré je dobre si uvedomiť pri implementácii projektov na báze umelej inteligencie. My sa snažíme, aby tieto riešenia boli pomocníkom, nenahrádzali teda ľudí a snažili sa pomôcť s tými ťažkými úlohami, ktoré trvajú čas a vyžadujú si isté ľudské úsilie. Toto samozrejme sa dá kvantifikovať a treba si uvedomiť, že keď sa implementuje takéto riešenie, stratégiu toho riešenia definujú ľudia. Čiže umelá inteligencia je naozaj obrazom toho, čo potrebujú jednotliví ľudia. Veľmi dôležitá vec, projekt na báze umelej inteligencie netrvá roky. Dá sa otestovať a tá doba, kedy sa dostane do prevádzky, je naozaj veľmi krátka. Ďakujem pekne.
Dámy a páni, Roman Tuchyňa zo spoločnosti Microsoft. Ďakujeme veľmi pekne.